Welcome, Holey Cow. Welcome to the Holey Cow. Today I'm here with Andrea Minnie, a friend from South Africa. We're going to be having a conversation. I'm going to be asking her some questions about her process, about herself, and there's also going to be a kind of open element to the conversation. We'll see where it goes. The Holy Cow kind of aspires to network and bridge in some way, so it's wanting to participate in different online networks, but at the same time keep building links and relationships and bridges to a local context. So this conversation is within that local domain. I've got a map of Joburg in the background as a kind of Joburg, South Africa, as a expression of that. G20 is here at the end of this year, by the way, in Johannesburg, South Africa, a political event. I'm not sure what I think about it. The conversation today, Andrea, we met maybe like 2021, generally in the like, how would you say, new spirituality, new age, pagan, South Africa, wild vibe scene. A couple of years ago now, Andrea felt the calling to initiate within a local tradition. We're going to talk about perhaps that a little bit, what it means to feel called, what that process was like for her. There are associated kind of race dynamics and cultural questions that might be interesting to us, interesting to explore. We'll see if that comes up. Um, and I think that is that. I'm going to hand it over to Andrea now just to introduce yourself, to say hello, to yeah, speak a bit about yourself. Who are you?
Oh my gosh, what do I say? I'm Andrea from South Africa, living out in the Garden Route. Yeah, I guess like life has taken me on some fun journeys before. I don't know. Kind of
The
like what you
the
want to hear, and then let's talk about it. But yeah.
yes, yeah, the one of the things I enjoy about this medium and at least having like a channel is that I can invite people and then we can kind of play with this dynamic, that we click record and then there's the strange presence of some assumed other and that necessarily like does some work on us, like who is it that we assume could be watching or listening? And I very like this. I very much enjoy the sense of like a open conversation and also um that it happens in some way in a public way. Like if we were having a conversation in a park, um someone could come and join the conversation, I guess, or listen in. It is a little bit more like
I think that
private
would
one to
still
one.
be more private than this.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes.
That's it's this potential big other, or like this potential other that could be anyone. It's a very interesting
Gotcha.
idea. So whoever you are, hello. Um, so
The third viewing party. I mean, sometimes at a younger age, a few years back, I had this thought where it's like, oh, okay, well, if we say there's another level, and yes, I might not have actual cameras on me, like what's that movie with whatchamacallit?
Truman Show.
Yes, thanks, like Truman Show. But what if we're actually like constantly watched like that, but just on a different plane? Like we're still being watched. Like having that third party, the way we have it now, the camera on us, technically you have it on you all the time, I
Okay,
think.
okay.
I don't
No,
think I know. That's my theories. That's my running theory.
it sounds terrifying. The I'm interested in I think a way in could be this kind of this moment where you reckon with feeling called and the direction that that calling seems to be taking you, um, and the kind of tensions that that brought up in yourself and in coming to make that commitment and begin to make that movement. Like I often hear it said that um, like the kind of language that can be used is being sick. like I was really sick with the calling or so
Mhm.
when just for context, this is into what would then translate. Yeah, we can get into details maybe a bit later. It would be interesting to hear about kind of the family that you found yourself in, the spiritual family. But this moment of of calling, like when were you most sick, and how did you know that you were sick, and what did you end up doing about it?
You, I mean, it was something that slowly got built up over time. It wasn't just a 1 week episode and oh, you're sick now, this is your solution. It's something that built up like over years, actually. Um, but I guess after years and years of trying to find some lineage, some teaching, and I mean, mind you, I tried a few things. I tried the Vipassanas, I tried um, the therapies, yeah, the therapies where you actually like do things. What you call it? Like the anger management stuff. I did the medicine. I tried so many different avenues to help me, I guess, find light and direction within myself, and I just couldn't. Um, excuse me. And I guess leading up to the peak of it, looking back, if I think about the sickness, like the conversations that I was having were a lot more mad than they are now. Um, a more vocal and louder awareness of other layers to reality. Things in the physical world like jobs and money, nothing stuck. My friendships, my relationships, everything broke. Like I couldn't, whatever I touched, like I grew up living a life where everything I touched turned to gold. And then I went through this patch where it just all turned to shit. Like I really had no solution for nothing.
Hmm.
I had nowhere to go, no house. My house got taken. My salary, my job, my relationship with my family, so I couldn't even come home. My friends, yeah. And then I guess just by chance, I reconnected with a family member who turned out to be a Sangoma. And he took a look at me and he was like, well, this is what you need to go and do. I was like, cool, well, I have nowhere else to go and stay. So if this is the case or not, if this is true or not, I don't really care. I just have nowhere else to go. So I
Oh.
went. Yeah. I think ignorance and curiosity led me most of the way.
Yeah, sure. Um, there's this really like it's a story that stuck with me about like just the cultural recognition of a calling or like a social recognition. So like um the two elderly ladies, or you'd say like go-go's, who are hitchhiking and they get a lift with this young man and they realize after like 10 minutes that he has a calling that he's running away from, and they just like let us out of the car. We don't want to be here at all with you, because there's just this expectation that um if you're in this posture of running from something, you're likely going to run into something, and it's going to be messy. And the older woman was just like, we don't want any part in your waywardness, so we are.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, right? If you do run from a calling, you are actually running from death. Like, you do get targeted with more and more dangerous, universal, like things, spiritual, inexplicable things to some people. So the more they run, the sicker they get. And then it's funny, like, I've seen miracles happen where people were literally dying in hospital, couldn't find any cause for what was happening. They go, they initiate, and it's all just gone and fixed and never a problem again. So I don't know if it's placebo and if it's real, but whatever it is, it works for some.
Something happens. There's something there. This when you say that a family member recognized something, are you speaking about the family that like the spiritual family that you came into, or like your direct relatives by blood, or
Family recognized. Wait, repeat when I said
um
that, so then I can give you the right answer.
you didn't say you said a couple questions ago like you might have said uncle, I'm not sure. But a family member who was a Sangoma recognized something and told you that you probably need to go um along a certain path.
He just said you need to go stay where I stayed with the family that
Okay.
I stayed with, and they'll go and teach and explain everything to you. But this is your best solution. And I was like,
Yes.
well, my only solution, so let's do it. So we did.
Yes. Yes. And in Gugulethu, which is brave.
So I
How
think
you
so.
gonna say? You say you think so? Yes. I mean, as open of a question that I can ask there because it's a it's a difficult area. It's a pain spot. Just for context for anybody who's listening outside of South Africa, like Gugulethu is one of the townships in Cape Town in the on the Cape Flats. Um, yeah, I mean when you fly into the Cape Town airport, then you go on the highway. It's just like sprawling. Um,
It's pretty much the first bunch of shacks that you see, the townships
from the
that people
airport.
pretty much are. It's where I stayed.
Yeah, so just really impoverished areas, which was not
Mm.
your upbringing. It was not what you were used to, but you followed this calling into that context, into that
Mm.
uh frightens many people, and it's a pain point, ongoingly so in South Africa that we have such disparity. But you you followed a calling into that context, so that's a rough like stage setting. But I'm just really curious how you've grappled with that, how you think about it.
I mean, I think the biggest saving grace was the fact that the person that told me to go already went through the whole process. So I knew that he knew where I was going. I knew that the people that I was going to knew him. So I wasn't just a stranger, or it really did help to have almost that like VIP in, like I have a big brother that went to this before me kind of thing. So that definitely
Mm.
did help. Um, Yeah, I mean, leading up to it, if I look back and I've had this conversation a few times, I was very fortunate because however my life ended up being set up until that point was pretty perfect, where all of a sudden being in a whole new context, in a whole new community with people where I don't understand the language or I don't eat the food. I did do the 2 years in Asia where I used to make a joke and I was like, okay, never ask questions about like what you're eating because you don't know, you know. So yeah, like so doing it again wasn't that painful. The language barrier wasn't that painful. So sleeping on the floor wasn't that painful. Getting up at 3 a.m. I mean, I sat Vipassana and we went through all of that before. So I was able to do it again. It was really divinely set up in that way for me. So I'm pretty grateful for that.
Mm.
Yeah, it's just all kind
Mm.
of extra testament to, I guess, the reality of my reality. Yeah.
Sure. Your fellows, the people you initiated with, the people you initiated alongside of, or the people whom you met through that process. How do you feel in relation to them? What's the kind of bond that you share with each other? Um, do
What?
you, is it an extended group or?
And that's a tremendously good question, so thank you for asking it. Um, I guess sadly for me, I was very outcasted my entire time when I was there, right? And they make this big deal about the group that you initiate with. Those are like the people you would go to war with, like they're your family. But for some reason, our group, our year, our graduation little posse is not that close. So we'll see each other every 6 months when we visit Gugs again. But yeah, it was very much
Yeah.
every man for himself. We were all a group of loners in our own right. I think it was all like our group was the group of all the outcasts.
Yes, yes,
Mm.
it happens. Even in schools, you get different year
Mm.
groups, different year groups. But you are all connected to your spiritual mother or your gogs. Um,
Mm.
we can, I think, maybe go there in a little bit. Um, I was uh, I don't want to press the issue, but
Mm.
these the sense of a collection of outcasts or like herding cats that's really resonant. And there's this continual tension in terms of a healing path where it kind of can't be clear cut for you beforehand. Like the negativities of the path is the strange part of the path. Like it's a but you can't kind of fake those conflicts or you can't manufacture them. So the tensions that you come into that make you the person that you're going to be are kind of what constitutes your life already. So it's like it's hard to
Mm.
institutionalize that kind of setup. There's a background question here, and I don't know if you've seen this formalization of the traditional health practitioners something. Like it's now got constitutional status. You can be certified in the health practitioners society or something. But that's council.
Sure, the Traditional Healers Organization.
Yes, and the part of
Yeah.
the health part of recent, I think, part of the health thing. But uh, running away with myself, the how much um I've spoken to another younger white man who initiated, and when he was wearing his beads and his cloth around, he even got spat on by people because of the racial difference. How
Wow.
much was that this strangeness
Mm.
between your fellow initiates? How much did race come in? And I guess it would also be from the blood family that you're coming from. Like how are these dynamics playing with each other through your process? I guess your family was also a bit um concerned or questioning.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously everyone had something to say about it. Um, and I wasn't exactly quiet about it. The person that told me to go and initiate, they didn't tell their family at all. Um, up until like 8 months or something, they just disappeared for 6 months. Didn't tell anyone where they were going. And they told me, they were like, Andrea, you should consider this. And I said, no, not a chance. I'm just telling everyone I'm doing this. Um, I guess we can start with my blood family. Obviously, I come from an extremely white suburb in Afrikaans, Pretoria. All right, so it's very Christian. And if you hear Sangoma, you think witch doctor, you know, the ones that are thieving babies and all of this and that, which is fair. That was also my own, like my concern, but I realized that's just poor education um, within the Sangoma collective and the Healers collective. And Sangomas and witch doctors are different things. and so forth and so forth. Um, yeah, I don't know what my parents' like worries were about the racial aspect of me staying where I was staying. It was always just, are you warm? Are you well fed? Are you looked after? Are you safe? You know,
Yeah.
which is very fair aspects because especially if you don't know the area where you end up staying, because it's more than just race, it's actual physical safety and
Yes.
security as well.
Yeah.
Um, and then as for the people that initiated with me, that was fine. Um, they understood that I have a calling. They respected me with my ancestors and all of that. Again, it helped that the other person was there before me. So I don't have to prove to anyone, oh, I have ancestors. They were all kind of like, okay, yeah, she has it. Now we just need to get it out of her kind of thing. Um, but obviously inside, when they got really angry and they tried to break me or find a weak spot, because that happens, um, I was called a racist a lot, a lot, a lot. And like in the beginning, it bothered me a little. Then after a while, you're like, whatever. But there was no differences really. Um, Lots of jealousy. But again, I can't say that was because of my skin color. I think it was like when I was spoken about in a bad way, my skin color came up. But I didn't think, yeah, the dislike came from the skin color. Yeah.
Mm.
I don't know. Does that answer the question? I went the long
Yeah,
way
I mean,
around.
um, it was a bit of a scattershot question as well. So, but I think we can appreciate the difficulty of kind of even approaching these kinds of conversations, like race, like raising the subject of race, and we should give ourselves space. I think there's a yeah.
Raise the subject of race in this situation. It's like it's one of those things where you can't be sensitive about being called a white person or being called a black person, for example. Like if that's where you're gonna get stuck, you're gonna have a hard time, son.
Yes, yes. I
Yeah.
missed the first part there, what you said, but um the the you use the phrasing Sangoma collective. Um, how my partial understanding is that there's kind of families. So you get initiated into a family. You have your spiritual mother, and then there's like a family of families. How
Mhm.
did you experience this kind of intergenerational transmission, and did that? How did you experience the difference of say, the transmission of your family and the other families that you were in contact with?
Um, I mean, again, it was easy because if you follow the spirits that guide you, then things kind of just fall into place for you. Um, I mean, it wasn't that hard because it turned out that my ancestors were carrying the same clan names as the family that I ended up staying with. Um, so the spirits that walk with me found the family because it is their family. We are family, you know? Um,
Okay.
yeah, and to some extent, it goes deeper than blood with some things. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know how
Yeah. I
dark this
mean,
is going to be. Sorry, I need to charge my thing.
how do you say how dark it's going to be?
I just had to switch the light off to charge my computer. Mm.
Okay. Okay. Um, yes, family is an incredibly interesting, um, yeah.
Yes.
The the question that was in my mind escaped my mind. Maybe it will come back. Um, yeah, okay, this, I mean, maybe we can use like even the notions of blood and then like a non-blood bond. Um,
Okay.
in terms of the guidance that has come into your life through this process, so uh, and I'm assuming the process like is a solidification of the source of guidance.
Mm.
How much do How clear is your sense of where that is coming from? And how much in your observation of uh, your peers, I guess, do you see dynamics that are kind of, I don't know what it would be called, like um, I know that it's sometimes spoken about like certain revenge cycles can get locked into an ancestry. So there's like a discernment that's needed in that regard. You know, you're not just fulfilling the will of an ancestor that is like a revenge. I mean, have you encountered this manner of thing, and how do you navigate that?
Ah, you on top of it with these questions. So go for it. Okay, well, I do feel, however, like there were two questions in one. So it was the one about the revenge ancestor, and then there was another one just before that. That was also I felt like important, but I can't remember now.
I was fumbling around family, and then I also brought in like a blood bond and non-blood bond, I guess.
You asked, do I have like a clear understanding of where I
Yes,
think source or
yes,
something comes from? I think that was yeah.
yes, yes. Yeah.
Mm.
So there were three there, I think.
Yeah, I missed the third one. Let's just start
So
with the
it's
two.
okay, yeah. Go for it. What I mean, whatever you have to say will be good.
Okay, let's start with the harder one that I don't know too much about, and I guess it's like the revenge spirit. Um, Honestly, I don't think it has to be that deep. I think anything and everything can be sorted out with a conversation and the right conversation and a good intention. No matter if you are a physical flesh human being and if you are spirit. Um, yeah, I guess again, they're like people as well. So if someone's upset, how do you get to the solution around fixing how they're feeling? You know, you understand what they want, where they're coming from, how to give it to them. If you can't find a middle ground and you figure it out that way, you know. S- Especially in this day and age, if you wish to believe in, you can finish quick if you want.
No, no, sorry about that.
I
All good.
was gonna say in this day and age, if you still believe in vengeful spirits, then I think you're just being lazy. Lazy and uneducated and ignorant. Yeah,
Great.
that's the one. And then where does it come from? I mean, I think about this almost every day. And I think the best way to explain it is like there's an ecosystem of source communication. It's not just everything comes from one place. Um, so yes, my time in Googs did give me the time and space to, what did you say, solidify my understanding of who these spirits are, what they are, whatever. Um, yeah, I mean, like even coming out of it and reconnecting with faith, you know, then you learn what the voice of God sounds like, and you communicate with that, and then you add it on to your collection of voices, for example, you know. So yeah. comes from many places, but all from the same place. It's complicated.
Yeah, I think there's a um, ongoing and very interesting and there's a lot that goes into it, this conversation around the interfacing of the traditional expressions of spirituality and Christianity, essentially. And
Hmm.
there's a particular um, expression of that tension in your life. You're sharing that your family is Christian, you were raised Christian, or the community
Mm.
that you were raised in was Christian, or was a I mean, yeah, I guess we can just pursue that a little bit. I mean, were you raised in the church? Was that your kind of upbringing, or was it more kind of um, was it not so much the case? I mean, we stopped going to church, I think, when I was 12, or younger even, younger.
Oh, it's so funny. Like you're asking me, my mom's standing like right there. I was like acutely aware
Ancestors, you know.
of the
But
conversation. Church, no, yes. Pretty much raised in a church all the way up until like university, past university.
okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Uh, but I mean, not as heavy as other families that like I came from, the community that I came from. So yes,
yes.
Christian basics, fundamentals, foundations, but it wasn't as rigid and strict and militaristic in my household as I maybe saw in other people's households.
The Energia Kerk.
Exactly. That's the one.
That's that's where you were.
Yes.
Okay, great. Um, I would love to return to this, but let's maybe let it breathe a bit. Um,
Okay.
the because I want to pick up this other thread.
Oh no.
I mean, our our situation of being connected to the network of I mean, being on the internet,
Yeah.
um, and then
Mm.
it does this. It's strange, or yeah, we're navigating this kind of uh, multi-sourced influence, especially in this context of intimate guidance. So like a gogo or like that kind of relationship is itself maybe rare, or at least culturally it's we're kind of struggling with it a bit, this intergenerational um,
Men.
mentorship really. Um, which is actually, I think, the note that you responded to a week ago or so, um, with this older Keith. I think you saw a story about it. So the question is in this area of how much did you feel and not to speak in like a conclusive way, but how much did you feel your process contained by the relationship with your spiritual mother and the other sources of influence that perhaps were coming to you through the web? I mean, another way to ask the question more simply would be like, what are the kinds of things that you are inspired by and studying, or like any names, any books, or
Oh, you're so good. Don't never stop doing this, please. Please never stop. Okay, well, I mean, before I initiated and before I went through that process, I already had a good 4 years of awakening, right? And getting fed. It all started with like conspiracy theories. At one point, like, I believe the earth was flat on the weekends, just for shits and giggles, because I think, you know,
COVID?
yes, no, but it did set off some domino effect into understanding that there's more layers to this like game that we're playing, right? Um, so I was pretty woke already. And then when I went in So my time that spent there, minimal cell phone usage at all. You're kind of cut off from the connection on the outside. You're not really allowed to watch TV. You're not allowed to have all these other things. And even in the beginning, when I had these thoughts about, oh, but the universe, my spiritual mother would cut me off and say, no, ancestors. Like, go talk to your universe when you leave. It's not my problem. It's not my business. We work with ancestors. So, we kept it pretty sanitary in that sense, where everything and anything that came through within the time span that I was there was all just based on and around the work that I needed to do, essentially. Yeah.
Okay. I mean
Yes.
that's a gift in itself, that time away
Mm.
from a phone in a um
And I
yeah,
think
but
that,
then mm,
yeah,
no, no, go for it. Yep.
I was going to say one of the things that I'm grateful for the most, especially being a white girl in this situation, is my mentor, she didn't tell me how things were supposed to be. She helped me figure out how it's supposed to be myself. So at no point was I forced information. I would go with questions and I would be told what's the answer that comes up within. And then I would say the answer that comes up within, and they would be like, yes, that's correct. Or, cool, go chew on it and have a conversation or whatever. So yeah, I'm very blessed. Like I got really, really lucky in like my whole experience. And I know like a lot of people don't have that privilege at all.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a volatile, um, potentially crazy making, um, all sorts of power dynamics come into play. Um,
Lots of money. That's the other thing. There's so much money that
mm,
transfers hands in this one industry. It's ridiculous.
wow. Tax exempt. It's
100% zero tax. No tax.
cash only. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, business opportunities. It could be. Um, didn't you have plans to buy land so we can maybe get it?
Odds, obviously. I just need to find the right area. Where would I be shaping up for the next, what, 40 years? How old am I? 30. Yeah, 40 years.
Okay, you're aiming for 70. I
I
could
feel like
do
that's
maths if you didn't. The
thank you, because I can't.
so it seems like this theme is um uh uh resurfaced, or I mean let's try and what's standing out for me is this breakdown of the moment of calling
Mm,
uh that leads up to it. Nothing's working.
mm,
It's just everything is frustrated. It's a real it's a real breakdown.
mm.
The path that um shows itself to you as the way forward crosses a number of cultural um norms,
Yeah.
boundaries, norms. But that's what shines to you in that moment.
Mm,
Then we take this kind of what sounds like was reflected in your Gogo's approach, which is like letting something arise in you and just being like a relational container, really, for something to develop.
mm.
Which like honors the volatility, but also the uniqueness of what happens for an individual. Um, there's a way in which there's always this possibility that we can like maybe could say like be a bit meta about the process. So there's this guy. he's a pastor, John, who I'm wanting to interview here on the cow. And what stuck out to me about his one part about his story was the he's in this community in Senegal, and a farm murder happens, and it's a young white guy, and John is a black guy. The kind of norm for him would be to not pay attention to the fact of that death. But
Mm.
he's walking past a poster that has this young guy's face on it, and it just like it shines out to him, and he stops, and he's really just like he pauses for a moment, and
Mm.
that what follows from that encounter is this like uh, defines his journey for the next while, which is involves a whole bunch of like these community tensions because like why are you caring about the white person dying? Look, like we're struggling, like
Mm.
we've got stuff to care about. Like why is this the thing that you are uh,
Mm.
paying attention to or asking us to pay attention to? So I'm seeing these kind of these movements that like cross these boundaries or these assumed there's like particular tensions there that get worked when people follow this calling, and so
Mm.
like there's this from it's and I think that it's often the case, like often the thing is so close to us that it's hard to like appreciate
Mhm.
what we're involved in, or um so this what uh what is salient for me in these instances is this kind of um the the cultural things that come up that are the consequence of a person choosing a particular path. So I'm like stumbling at the end here towards the question, but like I'm trying to bring out this kind of uh, maybe the word is like a meta reflection, or and it's in the same area to the questions that I've kind of asked, but it's like what I guess I'm most interested, like what have you observed in that regard? Like the in your sense of how your social image is mediated by others because of the decisions that you've made. Um, in however you're thinking of like just the broader context, the broader social body that you're embedded in.
I mean, what are you trying to ask me? Like, what gives me the nerve, the audacity as a white girl to be a Sangoma? Like an African like tradition situation? Is that
I'm
kind
not
of where we're going?
the
Or am I not
I'm not
understanding? Just ask the
so
question straight if you can.
yes,
Please ask it just straight.
I'm
Even if you
not
think it's hurtful, it's not.
I'm not asking that question,
Okay.
but I'm aware that that question is there, and
Yes, okay.
that's why I'm like putting these two examples. And I think like a lot of the work is happening at the site of those tensions.
Mhm.
That's my impetus, you know? So
Yeah.
that's why my sense to ask you how you've experienced that, having the sense that others have that question for you, or maybe even being given that question straight. Like
I mean, I don't know. It's like I within myself, I got to a point where I'm like, I don't give a fuck if you like it or if you don't like it. Like I don't care. If you approve or don't approve, I'm sorry, I don't care. Um, I'm sleeping better at night. I got my shit back straight. Like I'm not crazy or mad anymore. I can actually make clear decisions. I have my life back. I don't give a crap what you think. Um, it worked for me and it gave me back my life entirely, and um so what if I had to learn a different language and a way of beads and I mean, I would much rather go into African spirituality than go and try shamanism, like South Americanism, when I like have nothing to do with that. Like I don't belong in South America. You know what I'm saying? So it's and even less so in Europe, where my ancestors are from. Like I'm not going there for this. So yeah. And again, like I have Black African ancestors that like do all of this amazing miracle stuff. Um, I didn't choose this life. I just work here, you know? Like I'm just out here doing my job at the end of the day. Like I can't, you know, I am pretty public about it. I have the TikTok account. I've been at the mercy of a lot of backlash and a lot of like people saying a lot of mean things as well. And you just get to a point where it doesn't really matter.
Mm, mm,
You know, if you don't, because here's the thing, right? There's nothing like nothing about what I'm doing is fake. That has been proven 100% as true. This is a real thing in my life, you know? Um, and if you don't agree with it, and because of that, you choose not to either engage with me or learn from me or experience anything, then I mean, so be it. Like, I guess for me, I would say that's like your loss, just because I think I'm pretty dope and people would lose out. But yeah, so I mean, yeah, I'll wear my cloths in the city, and some like Black teenage girls would be spewing ugly things and say all these things in judgment, and you know, I'll be walking in the malls and people would stare, but my shit's working, bro. Like, yeah.
yeah.
And a calling is a calling, and if you truly understand what you're working with and what you're like dealing with, then people accept it, people celebrate it. Like, especially the elders of communities where I've walked into. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm seen as a miracle as a white girl rocking up at these gatherings in these like very, very rural places. Um, and they are just grateful because they get it. Like it's freeing once a person gets, you know, settles the calling sickness. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate your response and the um yeah, the this was my sense that these the those kinds of fires, you could say,
Mm,
are those tensions that are um hard to fabricate and uniquely tailored for you, like your
mm,
embedded situation, and so you're like uh, navigating those dynamics is part of the curriculum that you have
mm,
to discover for
mm,
um, for yourself. And then you look at our larger context, and then you're just vaguely aware of these generally held notions across race lines, across cultural lines, across economic divisions. Um, then stories like uh, the the young guy that I chatted with who's a white dude and he got spat on because he was wearing cloth. Um, so it's a it's a yeah, it's a there's
The thing is,
a
it's
yeah.
highly personal and it's highly private, highly, highly personal. Like, no two people would ever have the same story or the same experience, right? And there's one thing you're taught, especially if you go through the process of initiation. Um, you're not just connecting with your ancestors and these spirits with visions or dreams. You're actually living their life. So if they went through a phase of being exiled or bullied, you will go through that same exile and that same bullying. If they went through abuse or if they were the ones that used to abuse, they will make sure that you experience it in your own life. Some people dream it, and then other people, their life, literally, like their physical life, is a replica of certain phases within this ancestor's life. So, I mean, yes, we can say he got spat on, and that's because people are almost xenophobic to white Sangomas. That's not necessarily the case. Like, if I was a mentor and I looked at it, I would say, oh, there's a story behind the ancestor behind it. So you have an ancestor that was exiled and a loner and spat on and disrespected. Why? Maybe because, I don't know,
Mm.
shame to the bloodline.
What's the kind of view that gets given in terms of the necessity of the recycling or the repetition? I mean, how's that kind of thought of? Like, is the kind of image that is used like you have a certain repository that you need to clear, or are you, is it kind of like a perpetual position that you're meant to take in terms of um being open to that? To get the kind of like
Mm.
area?
Again, I think it's person to person, essentially. Some people need to actually be broken down and humbled to a pulp because ego affects too much. Like, you can't have an ego and be vengeful on this path. For example, you can't be spiteful and say, oh, you hurt my feelings, so I'm gonna fuck you up, kind of thing. uh, but I was going with that somewhere. Shoot, I forgot. Help me.
It's all good. The
Sorry.
the 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 general question was around like the framing that gets used in terms of the the necessity for certain repetitions, like, well, why is it the case that um you need to go through certain things? So like you can use certain understandings to maybe like buffer the going through those, or
So, I mean, it depends on each and every ancestor, for example. And I mean, you can bring it back to epigenetics and science and like even your parents and the traumas that are stuck within them that are manifesting within you day to day, right? So, um, some ancestors want you to, for example, maybe not follow in their footsteps. So they did something a certain way, they make you go through it again for you to ultimately change it to break that generational pattern. I mean, but that's what we see with, um, I guess, even Jungian like therapy, breaking generational patterns the same way. You pick up the problem, you fix the problem, and like make sure it doesn't happen again, kind of thing. Um, Repetition can, I don't know, some family secrets come out to some people. For some people, it's very important to find out information about a family. Repetition can be to build strength, for example. If you had an ancestor that was um, good in the war and very fit, then all of a sudden people have cravings to like run and become more fit. And so it's just, I guess that.
mm,
you it's part of the relationship building, but also unlocking a part of yourself within yourself. Like, I have a natural instinct to climb trees that I never understood, um, until I met an ancestor that used to run and jump in trees barefooted, you know? And now it's like, okay, cool.
I think I have the same ancestor. It was like the monkeys, yeah.
Say that again.
I think I have the same ancestor. The Before we came onto the Savannah Plains. the
Say about like really good athletes. It's actually warrior ancestry that's coming up. Like it's that warrior gene within the epigenetics that are coming up within these people in this generation where they crave to be active. And because we don't have like wars anymore, in the general sense, they step onto the rugby field or they run track. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, South Africa at the moment, at least. No wars.
Whatever.
The the okay, then the in what's your sense of the I guess the way to say it would be kind of like the end game, or I mean
Mm.
there is this breakdown, this being sick, and then this movement out of that. So it's healing is something that's involved in that. But then there's also the sense of a work that is undertaken. I mean, um, post being healed, or um, so in that kind of uh pretty in that kind of language, I guess. Like, what's your sense um of the end game, and how do you think of the work that is before you? Like, how do you frame that or think it or
It's a continuous process, literally, like as we speak, a daily process that I chew on and think over and through. Um, because I guess essentially, like for me personally, I'm not supposed to fit the stereotypical Sangoma, like aesthetic. What do you call it? I'm not, that's not my end game. I was supposed to go through the process for very specific reasons, and it's a year and a half out now, and I'm still learning reasons for why I went through what I went through. Um, some days like, I guess for my own heart and for my own peace, I try and find the connection between the knowledge that I gained from ancestors and what that means, and then also in like modern spirit science, quantum entanglement and trying to like see how these things are fitting together. Because obviously they are all the same things. It's just I don't know. I don't know if the goal is for me to understand myself or if it's to teach it. I am working on a few things to like help people because I mean, when I have clients, I always end up teaching the same things over and over. Uh, where I'm supposed to go as end game with this, I don't know if I'm supposed to lead a cult one day or if I'm supposed to die with some wisdom alone on my deathbed and just have like learned one story from one Nguni warrior, then I don't know, then it's what it is.
uh
Like the rest of the
uh
world, we're just out here trying our best, you know?
yes, yes.
Yeah.
The I mean, I guess it seems like there are two potential differences. Like, we could um there's the story of the like, to what end or to the purpose, that
Hmm.
might that might be a place where, like, we can include the Christian upbringing.
Hmm.
Then the other direction could be, I'm curious as to, like, who's being attracted to you, and uh what you're kind of working with. Like, what are they struggling with? What are you seeing?
Actually, like you're asking the kind of people that are coming my way.
Yeah, yeah, that's the second.
Okay, wait, can you ask your question again just so I understand that I understand it?
I'm curious about who's being attracted to your work. Like, who
Mhm.
are the people that you're being that you are encountering, and what do you see them as kind of as wrestling with, or as dealing with, or what are you seeing in that regard?
The biggest thing is people being aware of alternate like levels and universes and frequencies and um but they still think and believe that they're alone. So it's only all still things that are in their head. So people that come to me are usually still people that are freaking out because thank goodness I'm not the only one. Andrea, I can't believe you're Afrikaans and South African because like how do you have these expansive thoughts and theories and wisdoms and knowledges? And I'm sitting out here thinking, well, everyone in my life is like this, but um, so that's a big one. But I guess a thing that most people struggle with essentially, and it's just listening to their own guidance. People are so disconnected from themselves and they so desperately seeking for answers and guidance outside of themselves. Um, they end up even creating their own noise in their minds. Um, so yeah, it's just bringing back that connection between yourself and your truth ultimately, because I think that's also what I learned in this whole journey, and I will never judge anyone based on how much or how little they know. I think life is so personal. You you get faced with what you get faced with for your own reason. Um, that's not my business at all. But you do deserve to have clear and open communication with whatever you're dealing with. So yeah.
Ah, that's just in my personal experience, Afrikaans people are far out. That's my sense. But um less seriously, this your response reminded me of the conversation that we had on the mountain a couple of years ago, I think, or a few years ago now, where
Dragon.
you were listening to dragons at this stage. Um, I think you had just come back from Dhamma Pataka. Um, you had just spent time there at
Mhm.
Vipassana.
Yeah.
Um, I also had an experience with dragons at Dhamma Pataka this last time, but maybe that's for another time. The
Finally. Finally. Yes.
the the I didn't pay them much attention, just to be clear. I said alone.
I didn't hear any of that.
Okay. The
Okay, good.
the I hope I'm not kind of uh, divulging too much of what was
Mm.
shared in a conversation, but your aspiration at that time was it was reflected in what you shared now, was the sense of like a land or somewhere where people could come and express their thought,
The
like
madness.
yes, like I'm
Mhm.
speaking to dragons, and just be kind of understood uh and contained, or a place for that to happen. The kind of
Mm.
the logic in your thinking at that time was just like this the healing of hearing, the healing of being um being heard in that regard. Um,
Mm.
but the land was kind of away from the city, like in the somewhere out. Um, so it's good to hear the continuation of that theme, or whatever impulse is in that. And it will be interesting to see how that pattern develops in your life, in your process. Um, there's probably like a whole conversation in that area. Um, and the the things that you're mentioning now, it does raise this really important kind of area around um, things that often get put together, like spiritual process and psychosis and uh,
Mm.
the dangers in these. uh, Yeah, what to do. There's a there's definitely a lot in that regard. Um, and yeah, as you say, like a shortage in containing, um, which is always kind of ambiguous because sometimes certain uh, it is that very process of being put through that kind of tumbler that can produce a unique or
Mm.
rare individual, but the way
Mm.
is very dangerous, and there are many uh, shortfalls that that something got you there.
No, I mean, I'm just thinking like it's not about containing anything. I don't think anyone needs to be contained, no matter what your state of being is mentally. It's genuinely just acknowledgement and encouragement for the madness. I think, eh, you know, that whole thing about the antidote is usually in the poison kind of thing. Or like to fix it, yeah, yeah. Don't know what the true saying is, but uh, you kind of just have to let people be mad, encourage them to be mad, to essentially get it out of their system for them to come back into balance of like and pure mental clarity.
Yes.
Like, we don't have
Yeah.
space for that, you know. We're not living in a society where, you know, you can have a moment and scream in your house without like the neighbors complaining, or people don't get to express, people don't get to say or be or feel nothing. They can't be mad, and you're supposed to be crazy. That's the only way that you can fight the crazy, is to be crazy, so that you can hear yourself and be like, fuck, that was crazy. I should probably not do that. Be like that. You know? It's like
Yeah. The
that's the only way.
and I mean the I think when we don't do that successfully collectively, it does translate into the madness that is something like war, you know? Like so that's that's um yeah, it's inevitably a messy area that we're speaking about, but the stakes are quite high in terms of um mediating.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's a big reason for like emotional and aggressive outbursts. Um, People that blow a fuse and become so short-tempered and just see red. Um, you know, that's a big, whatchamacallit, um, it's a big side effect. So with rage, um, yeah, depression is a big one, obviously. Loneliness, it just feeds and adds to loneliness, and people keep on feeding. And then victim mentalities, and I don't know, just a lot of therapy stuff. Anyway.
There's a kind of anti-psychiatrist guy that I studied for a bit, had this idea of like freedom in explanation, I think. So like if
Mm,
it helps you navigate a room full of people to say and think with the idea of like an aura, like if this is how you make sense of it for yourself, then it's all
mm,
good for you to have that explanation for yourself. There's like a certain liberty or like a private domain that you can have in that regard, which I think there is definitely something
mm,
to that. He is contextualized in his own kind of historical moment. I think like today there is the danger with the kind of online spaces that we have of having these languages that are essentially like crazy and transformative be put forward as something like a worldview, or like there's a
mm,
distinction, like a um uh, what's it between? It's between transfor uh, transformational language and then like explanatory language. And the language for transformation can involve like things like impossibility, like with uh, uh, I was on fire, for instance, maybe like the I think there's a risk when that gets taken up into like a sense of what would the other be like this is how reality is.
Mm.
And then those because of the bubbles that we have online, those like what is essentially like language that is appropriate to transformative process
Mm.
gets like bubbled into a group who share a worldview essentially, but they kind of like close themselves in their language that is it's, very messy how I've tried to express this now, but it's yeah.
Still need a ton of discernment, in this whole journey and process. No matter what, especially like in this day and age with the internet. Back then with the textbooks, we only had, what was it, Young, and what who was the other one? Freud, right? Like those are two names, two textbooks, kind of two ways of thinking. Now you're dealing with open source information, 8 billion people. Um, you can't you can't control anything, any information that you are fed. I think the only control that you have is to literally fact check with yourself, like become a little body pendulum and be like, is this true or is this not true? Like that's unfortunately the only hope we have is your own discernment to be able to say like, yo, this is useful, this is crap. I mean, AI, dude, you can't even tell.
the I get really frustrated when I see text online that is from AI. But
Have you seen the
I'm
videos
not
though? It's nuts.
yeah, that's a whole kind of worms there. But this this theme kind of looped us, I think, because that um there's this it brings this dynamic of cultivating that discernment oneself, but in the context of like a um generational mentorship or and then that links into tradition and like so it's not a new thing to be a human, but we are here trying to do the best with the circumstances that we have. So we have huge pools of resources that we can pull from. There's a very disorientating and new network internet space,
Mm.
which means like the private thoughts of some stranger somewhere else can be shared, and that can snowball and create this pocket of insanity that we get taken up in. Um,
Mm-hmm.
COVID was a rife time for that. Like conspiracy theories were going wild, and
Mm-hmm.
they're incredibly appealing because of the way that they can give us the sense of an answer to a wide scope of phenomena. And like these are the things that we kind of wrestling, and we wrestling that along the kind of in the meat situation where traditions are perpetuating themselves, but it is also the case that like each tradition, though it might point and reach back, it's also subject to this incredibly
Mm.
fragile process of transmission. So the people that we learn from have also needed to find their own way to navigate um, the situation that they're in. It's then very interesting in terms of the particular traditional space that you've initiated into in terms of how colonial process, apartheid interrupts manners of transmission, interrupts
Mm.
lineages, interrupts tradition. There's like a danger of a certain fantasy of returning to some kind of ideal, something that never actually never actually was. Um, but there's
Mm.
a host of stuff here. Um, probably steering to. uh, close, and again, terribly open from my side. But is there anything else you would like to share? Anything you would like to ask? Anything you feel is incomplete? Anything that's pressing for you to say as well, or um, maybe like a extreme criticism or any, anything that you want to
Extreme
say?
criticism? What?
Just tear me apart, please.
No, I can't. You never.
Okay.
No, I am thoroughly impressed by what you brought to the table this evening. I enjoyed all of it, so thank you. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's just, it is what it is. This life is pretty colorful. I think at most, the thing that has brought me a lot of peace is just knowing that there is no right nor wrong. Um, but also anything and everything is true. It's as true as you make it to be, and it's okay. It's the greatest relief was realizing that the world that I knew or that I saw when I was growing up, the work, the 9 to 5, school, university, white picket fence, 2.4 kids, all of that. Like the biggest relief was like, that's not all that this life has in store for me, you know. Um, I don't know, like if I can have one wish, it's just that every person kind of figures out that much for themselves, that there's more to this life and you kind of figure out what gets you excited. Eh, if dragons exist, let them exist. If it makes you happy, make yourself happy. Like, why not? But yeah.
Fab. The You're coming in from the garden route South Africa, which is one of the things that makes me happy. Um, I hope to be down there at some stage on the coast,
Mhm.
on our wonderful coastline.
Mhm.
Um, this has been great. The I think the sense of a theme that could link into the future is what you mentioned about uh, faith coming back into your life. It came out
Mm.
quite early on in the conversation, but we didn't expand that. I'm definitely interested what's cracking there because that links again into these I think the aspects of these stories that have this wider cultural um and collective in terms of a country significance, the mediation between Christianity and traditional religions, um,
Mhm.
which uh, I have some thoughts about too around. Um, I mean, but for another time. Um,
Another Thursday.
another Thursday, yeah. Thursdays that feel like Fridays. Tomorrow
Mm.
is Friday the 13th. Um, and then other important news, the G20 is happening here in South Africa this year. I don't know if I mentioned. It's
You
happening
did. Are
here
you excited? It's the second time you mentioned the G20 happening here in South Africa.
somewhere here in Joburg. I'm trying to figure out where it is. That's the sense of Joburg there. Um, but I think that's probably a good place to leave it. You sure you don't want to give one last insult to con?
No, one
Okay,
insult. Nah, you did too good for insults.
okay.
You can never.
Next time, maybe.
Next Thursday, yeah. Or the next Thursday. Cool.